a pretty perfect weekend for Liverpool. Didn't look that way at one stage at half-time of the Brighton game when they were 1-0 down. But in the end, they came back, 2 quick-fire goals. Man City losing at the same time, Arsenal losing in the early kickoff as well. A pretty perfect weekend all in all, and puts Liverpool in a very strong position in the title race, doesn't it?
Yeah, Everton lost as well, which I think most Liverpool supporters will be pleased about as well. So yeah, probably one of the best episodes of Match of the Day that a lot of fans have watched. And it was, for Liverpool, just utterly vital to win that game. I mean, it felt, in that first half, you knew Arsenal had lost and knew City were losing at that point as well. And although you're kind of expecting that City will come back, still think, oh, what an opportunity to create a 7-point gap to Arsenal. Even just to take that from the day would have been fantastic for Liverpool. But with City actually going on to lose, it just made it even more important. And I just thought a great show again of kind of mental strength, but also great tweaks from the manager. I think one of the things he'll probably be a little bit miffed about is that past few games actually Liverpool have kind of been outplayed really in first halves, and whatever tactical plan the opposition have come with, they've kind of fallen into it and fallen for it and been dominated in that way. But, if you don't give up too many chances in those periods, and I thought Liverpool, again, this is something Arne Slot has spoken about, actually, is that they didn't actually give up too many huge quality opportunities, even as Brighton dominated. And similarly against Chelsea and Arsenal, actually, if you do that in the periods where you're struggling, it does give you a chance to come back. And they absolutely did that. And I thought the combination of just minor tactical tweaks, but more just improved intensity in the second half, just massively up the performance, and in the end they absolutely deserve to run out winners. But and yeah, to add the fact that it's not just 3 points, but 3 points on a weekend when both your title rivals have dropped points is a phenomenal day for Liverpool.
Yeah, there was definitely times in that first half, especially, I'm sure I wasn't the only Liverpool fan who was thinking, okay, this is a massive missed opportunity. If you are going to lose, it's best to do it on a day where Arsenal or Man City also lose, but a massive missed opportunity. But then, yeah, as you say, to turn it around, I think we'll touch on Slot and sort of his impact within games a little bit later, because, as you say, a couple of the first halves recently have been pretty poor, pretty underwhelming at best, but managed to change that. I think in the second half in this game, there was a noticeable impact from the crowd as well. So Slot obviously did his stuff, but the crowd really got behind Liverpool. There's been some talk or some suggestions maybe that wouldn't be the case as much under Slot as it was under Klopp, just because the style of play is not quite as bombastic. The manager is calmer than Klopp is on the touchline. But Liverpool needed the crowd there, and they stood up for the team and really spurred them on, didn't they?
Yeah, and there's been a bit of discussion around the Anfield atmosphere generally at the start of this season, and it I feel like it happens every season where people are saying talk about it as if it was always like Chelsea in 2005 in the Champions League in every single league game. It's never really been like that, certainly not in my experience. So the stakes have to be high. There has to be something there, and yes, it's always important that you win as many games as you can in the Premier League if you want to win the title, if you want to get above 90 points. So every game is important, I get that, but it's very, very hard for supporters to get massively up for games when it's the third game of the season. You can't go into that thinking it's now or never. We've got to win this, and everybody feels the stakes, and so you can't just make that. It's got to be sort of natural, and it's got to come from a genuine place. And I think the genuine place it came from at the weekend was the knowledge that Arsenal had dropped points. Everybody in the ground knew that City were losing and had gone down to 2-0. So it really did actually look like they were going to drop points. And also, the fact that there was a frustration there with Liverpool's first half performance and what happened in the second half. And it was the thing that Slot spoke about the most was just that upping of intensity. And that was the thing that really turned things for Liverpool. And when you get that in the second half, that the intensity that's shown on the pitch is improved, then the crowd feeds off that, and then the two things feed off each other, and it just sort of becomes a bit of a snowball effect, really. And I thought we absolutely saw that, and it was a combination of what was going on elsewhere, what had already gone on elsewhere, the fact Liverpool was showing that extra intensity, and then you get one goal, and the second one almost feels inevitable after that, because the crowd and the team are working in synergy. And so it was kind of reassuring, I think, to see that, because there had been, as you say, kind of suggestions that under Arne Slot, this type of atmosphere maybe wasn't possible because he's all about a bit more control. But I don't think he's quite as obsessive about that as is maybe made out. I think there is still a streak of kind of Jurgen Klopp style counter-attacking football that he will want his teams to play at times. And I think we saw that with the second goal. So yeah, great day really for Arne Slot to show that he can buy into that Anfield atmosphere. He can crank it up. He's capable of using that. And also from the crowd just showing how important he can be again. And yeah, it was they were as crucial as Liverpool's intensity in terms of turning that round in the second half. But the two things worked together really to do it.
Yeah, and I think, about the crowd, I think they're always going to get behind the team, no matter who the manager is. Of course, Klopp, with his energy, the crowd feed off that as well. And, the fist pumps after the game and sometimes during the game, geeing up the crowd. But the crowd, you go back to Rafa Benitez's time, as you mentioned, the Chelsea 2005, some of the best atmospheres Anfield has had for a long time was under Rafa Benitez. Not exactly a Klopp type of manager with that type of football. The crowd is always going to get behind. But as you say, the stakes sort of need to be there. A few elements need to combined to create that atmosphere. And I do think you're right in saying, I think away fans come to Anfield and, they've heard the Anfield atmosphere is, the best in the world, but often that's on Champions League games, big Champions League nights, and they expect that for 90 minutes of a normal Premier League game, when not always the case. So you often hear those chants of "Where's your famous atmosphere?" But they come in when it matters, doesn't it? And you certainly felt the stakes were high in that in the weekend game, didn't you?
Yeah, and this is it. I mean, you hear talk of, say a game against a team that's lower down the table and Liverpool maybe win it 3-0 and it's comfortable all the way through. There's no jeopardy there and the fans will maybe come away and talk about the Anfield myth and all that. But as you say, it's there when it's needed and it's kind of I think that's the difference maybe between sort of some of the great English atmospheres and some of the atmospheres, say, in German grounds, which, where I've been to cover Liverpool games, or, it's always famed for the atmosphere. But for me, I always prefer the English atmosphere, the fact that it's related to what's going on the pitch and the overall story of the game and its importance. So, yes, it will be quiet in those lesser games. There's not that constant drone of singing in the background. But when it's a huge moment like that, and it really, what turned out to be a really important game for Liverpool, it absolutely delivered, and it was raucous. Brighton couldn't cope with it. Their manager spoke about after the game. I saw, social media posts from Brighton fans who were there after the game talking about how incredible it was and how loud. Now, personally, I was sat there in the press box, and when the second goal goes in, kind of just looked around just to soak it all up, because it was an incredible moment, which, again, coming into a Saturday 3:00 against Brighton, I didn't think I would be witnessing that, but it really was. But it just perfectly kind of encapsulated that Anfield delivers when it really needs to and when it's important. And it's always related to what's going on the pitch, and is it's always a massive factor for Liverpool, and we absolutely saw that, and everybody from a Brighton perspective kind of echoed that as well after the match.
Yeah, and at the end of it all, Liverpool 2 points clear at the top of the table, as we mentioned. Obviously, City and Arsenal dropping those points. In terms of the title race as a whole, again, we always have to say it, certainly before Christmas, it's still early days, still an awful lot of football to be played. But certainly during the first half of the season, I always think there are milestones to get to. And if you're in a good position there, that sort of bodes well. The international breaks are often those milestones. I think 10 games into the new Premier League season, which we are now, is another milestone. So for Liverpool to be sitting top of the table, under a new manager, a better start than expected for many people with the new manager coming in, but also the other side of it with Man City struggling with injury issues. Obviously, Rodri, who we've spoken about, we both agree, I think is their most important player, out for the entire season. Arsenal stuttering certainly in form more than most people expected, and then also Edu's left this week, so a bit of turmoil towards the top of the club there with someone who's been pretty important to their rise over the last few years. It's all shaping up, again, with the caveat that it's still early days and we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but it's shaping up pretty well for Liverpool at the moment in that title race in the broader scheme of things, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've got to say, it's probably slightly more, I'd say from my personal perspective, it's slightly more than I expected. I thought there would be a few more teething issues under a new manager, because we've seen elsewhere that tends to be. And so the fact, but But also, we shouldn't be completely shocked, I guess, because this team was in a title challenge last season as well. I know they did fall away in April, but that's only 1 month out from the end of the season. They were right there at the top of the table. So they've clearly shown that they're capable of picking up a lot of points. And so because the transition's been so smooth, they just kind of kept that up. And, your real hope this season is that, the injuries don't bite quite as much, and that will allow Liverpool to go on for that sort of extra month and continue to compete. But they certainly look like they're right in the mix. And I do think it's helpful, of course, that some of the rivals are having problems. I mean, you start with Arsenal, 7 points behind. Okay, I wouldn't sit here and sort of say they're out of the title race, but that's a big deficit to claw back. That is a couple of losses you've got to eradicate from your record somewhere. It's that you've probably got to go on a 15-match winning streak at some point, I think, to kind of claw that sort of deficit back. Particularly if they want to break 90 points for the first time, which it's got to be the aim if you want to win the title. So they look in a bit of trouble, really. And yeah, you just wouldn't want to be in their position. And I was kind of quite big on Arsenal, actually, even after they had a few wonky results at the start, because I thought they've had a really difficult start on paper. They've had, a couple of injuries. They've had red cards in unfortunate moments. But as I say, regardless of that mitigation, it gets to the point where the gap becomes so big that you can't claw it back, no matter how many of your problems you solve. So that's a real concern for them, and obviously a huge boost for Liverpool. And with City, I watched the highlights of their game against Bournemouth, and again, I don't want to get carried away with them, because I think they tend to have some odd results at the start of seasons, and then they do win 20 on the bounce, and all of a sudden the title favourites, and you're being an idiot to write them off under that manager and with the quality that they've got. But the degree to which Bournemouth played through them and just tore them apart, you have to think that has something to do with Rodri's absence. And if that becomes a slightly more common occurrence, if that happens twice more a season than it usually does, that takes 6 points away from them, you suddenly go from being 90 plus to just short of that. And that gives sides like Liverpool a massive chance to be in the mix. So yeah, it's looking good for Liverpool, not just from their point of view in terms of how good they are looking as a team, but the fact that the title rivals really do seem to have some issues. So we'll see how that plays out. We're only a quarter of the way into the season, but it's encouraging early signs. I'd say, and it's encouragement for Liverpool that they can be in the title race and they can be there at the death.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned about Man City, actually watching their games and seeing how the games are developing is sort of the most encouraging thing from a Liverpool point of view, because they've actually started the season results-wise better than they usually start. Certainly their first defeat has taken a longer time to come. Also worth remembering that this just ended their club record unbeaten streak in the league as well. So by no means are they now losing games left, right and centre. But even the games they haven't lost this season, there's been a little bit less control than there has been, with Rodri in the team and under previous Pep Guardiola era. So, while they're still certainly there or thereabouts 2 points off Liverpool at the moment, and you'd expect them, as you say, to go on this ludicrous run they go on after Christmas, this year it feels a little bit different in terms of their control in games and potentially their ability to do that after Christmas, because they're not controlling every game. And this early season form has been okay, but it's not like they're going to have Rodri after the season. That these early signs are worrying. You'd back Pep Guardiola more than anyone probably to fix those signs, and maybe January they'll look to do that. But the loss of Rodri is just huge, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with that point, that they haven't really been playing well this season. And there's kind of two ways to look at that. My thoughts on that when they hadn't really been playing well was, you need teams around you to drop points when they're not playing well, because eventually with that quality, they will just start to play well. And if they're picking up results in the meantime, that's great for them. But you just wonder whether in the absence of Rodri, that the games where they don't play as well and they aren't as dominant and they can't just pen you in for 90 minutes and eventually the goal will come. If those games become more frequent, then the chances that they drop points becomes more frequent. And again, like I say, if it only can take in a title race 2 or 3 sort of wonky results out of nowhere, and it makes a huge difference when you sort of pushing for the other side of 90 points. So I think it's encouraging for Liverpool, and we'll just see. you know, whether that it really is the Rodri absence or it is a little bit of City just finding the feet and working things out, and as they usually do, and then they'll go on a run. But you know, he's so good and so influential that I think it will be an unbelievable achievement in managerial terms if Pep Guardiola can completely mask that across the season. I mean, for me, he was a deserved Ballon d'Or winner as the most influential player in any team, I would say, in world football. You know, he's that good. So if Pep, you know, like I say, masks that and manages to get the other side of 90 points, then, you know, I think the conversation about him being the best of all time might actually be over. That's genuinely how highly I would rate that as an achievement, because I think Rodri is phenomenal and irreplaceable, really.